The plasma cannon blast that should have killed Admiral Kalon Vorthok instead saved his career. Standing in the wreckage of the Terran Defense Council's most classified research facility, Vorthok watched emergency crews extract what remained of the prototype quantum engine that had just obliterated half the station. The explosion hadn't been an accident. His own nephew, Lieutenant Commander Drex Vorthok, had triggered the overload in a desperate attempt to cover his theft of Xenotech blueprints. Now, Drex was dead. The research was destroyed, and 300 million credits of taxpayer funding had vanished in a flash of superheated plasma. Worse, the press was already sniffing around the story. The scandal would destroy not just Vorthok's military career, but his family's thousand-year legacy of service to humanity. Admiral, his aide whispered urgently, "The Council wants answers. Within the hour." Vorthok's jaw tightened. He could throw Drex's memory under the transport and save himself, but that would implicate his sister, Drex's mother, who had unknowingly provided access codes. The Vorthok name would still be ruined. That's when she walked into his life, Dr. Lirelay. Nethys emerged from the smoke like something from a fever dream, tall, angular, with the pale complexion and silver-streaked hair that marked her as one of the Void Walkers, humanity's most enigmatic subspecies. Her environmental suit was scorched, her face streaked with soot, but her violet eyes blazed with an intensity that made Vorthok forget about his career troubles for a moment. "You're the one in charge of this mess?" she asked without preamble. "Admiral Kalon Vorthok, Terran Defense Council. And you are? The person who just prevented your nephew from selling humanity's quantum research to the hegemony." She pulled a data crystal from her suit. "I've been tracking Drex for months. This contains proof of his treachery and evidence that he acted alone." Vorthok stared at the crystal. It would exonerate his family, but raise uncomfortable questions about how this woman had infiltrated a classified facility. "What do you want in return?" Dr. Nethys smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Citizenship, full legal recognition, and a name that won't get me executed on sight in 12 different systems." The Voidwalkers were technically human, but their genetic modifications and nomadic lifestyle made them pariahs throughout the galaxy. Most governments classified them as pirates, terrorists, or worse. For Nethys to operate openly in Terran space, she would need more than just citizenship. She would need respectability, Merritt Vorthok said, understanding immediately. "You want to marry into the Vorthok family, a business arrangement, nothing more." Her violet eyes didn't waver. "Your nephew's betrayal dies with him. Your family honor remains intact, and I get legal protection. Everyone benefits." It was insane. It was also the only option that didn't end with his court-martial. Vorthok had built his reputation on making hard choices, and this was perhaps the hardest yet. Marrying a complete stranger, a Voidwalker, no less, to cover up a family scandal would raise eyebrows throughout the fleet, but it would also deflect attention from the real questions about security and oversight. "The ceremony will be tomorrow," he decided. "Small, private. We'll announce it as a wartime marriage, practical, not romantic." "Perfect." Nethys pocketed the data crystal. "Don't worry, Admiral. I have no intention of being the dutiful military wife. This arrangement serves both our purposes, nothing more." As she walked away, Vorthok couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a deal with forces beyond his understanding. But with reporters already gathering outside, and the Council demanding answers, he had no choice but to trust that this mysterious woman could deliver on her promises. He had no idea that in trying to save his reputation, he was about to discover what true worth really meant. The wedding of Admiral Kalon Vorthok to Dr. Lirelay. Nethys lasted exactly 14 minutes, and shocked the entire Terran fleet. Standing in the austere chamber of the military chaplain, Vorthok watched his bride sign the marriage documents with clinical precision. She wore a simple gray uniform rather than traditional wedding attire, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Everything about the ceremony screamed arrangement of convenience. which was exactly what they wanted the gossips to think. What the gossips didn't know was that the bride had just handed her new husband intelligence worth more than the gross domestic product of 12 star systems. The hegemony isn't just buying our quantum research, Nethys murmured as they signed the final forms. They're preparing for something called the Convergence Protocol. My sources suggest it's a preemptive strike against all human colonies outside the core systems. Vorthak's stylus paused over the document. Sources. I spent 15 years infiltrating their network. The Voidwalkers aren't just nomads, Admiral. We're humanity's early warning system. We go where others can't, see what others won't. Her violet eyes met his. Your nephew wasn't the first Terran they turned. He was just the most visible. The implications hit Vorthok like a meteor strike. If Nethys was right, the quantum engine theft wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger hegemony infiltration. That would explain the security breaches, the accidents, the string of setbacks that had plagued Terran military research for the past 2 years. Why tell me this now? He asked. Because now I have legal standing to testify before the Defense Council. Before our marriage, anything I said would be dismissed as Voidwalker propaganda. Now I'm Mrs. Admiral Vorthok, and that name carries weight. She was right, and they both knew it. The Vorthok family had served humanity for a millennium. Their loyalty unquestioned even by their enemies. By marrying into that legacy, Nethys had transformed herself from an outcast into a credible witness. The reception was held in Vorthak's private quarters aboard the dreadnought Sovereign's Pride. A handful of senior officers offered perfunctory congratulations, while clearly wondering what had possessed their admiral to marry a complete stranger. Vorthok played his part, the grieving uncle making an impulsive decision in the wake of family tragedy. Quite a catch, Admiral, commented Fleet Captain Morrison, his tone carefully neutral. Though, I have to admit, I've never met a Voidwalker before. They prefer the term deep spacers, Nethys replied smoothly. And you have met us before, Captain. We've just never been properly introduced. Morrison frowned. I think I would remember Epsilon Station, 3 years ago. System malfunction in the navigation array. A mysterious maintenance worker appeared, fixed the problem, and disappeared before you could file a report. Nethys smiled. That was my cousin Riven. He's been keeping an eye on Terran shipping lanes, making sure cargo vessels don't get lost in hyperspace. The color drained from Morris' face. Epsilon Station's records were classified, and the navigation malfunction had nearly caused a catastrophic collision with an asteroid field. If the Voidwalkers had been secretly maintaining Terran infrastructure, ... double quotes, how many of you are there? Morrison whispered. Enough, Nethys said simply. Later that evening, alone in his quarters, Vorthok confronted his new wife directly. You're not just giving me intelligence, you're revealing that your people have been protecting Terran interests for years without recognition or compensation. Why? Nethys was studying his personal effects family portraits, commendations, a trophy from his academy graduation. Because we're human too, Admiral. Just because we choose to live in the void doesn't mean we've abandoned our species. She picked up a photo of Vorthok with his sister and nephew, taken before Drex's betrayal. Your family understands duty, service, sacrifice. Those aren't just Terran values, they're human values. But the galaxy sees you as pirates. The galaxy sees what it wants to see. Fear is easier than understanding. She set the photo down carefully. But you're not afraid of me, are you? Vorthok considered the question. He should be afraid. Wife was a genetically modified human with unknown capabilities and divided loyalties. Instead, he found himself intrigued by her intelligence, her dedication, her willingness to sacrifice her anonymity for the greater good of humanity. No, he admitted. I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of what you represent, which is the possibility that everything I thought I knew about human nature is wrong. Nethys smiled, and for the first time, it reached her violet eyes. Admiral, you haven't even begun to understand what humans are capable of. 3 weeks into their marriage, Lirelei Nethys showed Admiral Vorthok something that changed his understanding of humanity forever. "We need to take a trip," she announced over breakfast in his quarters. "There's something you need to see before the Defense Council hearing. I can't leave the fleet. The hegemony situation is worse than you know." She slid a star chart across the table. "There's a reason the Voidwalkers stay mobile, Admiral. We've been mapping something the Terran government refuses to acknowledge." The chart showed standard hyperspace routes through the outer rim, but Nethys had marked dozens of locations with symbols Vorthok didn't recognize. Each symbol was connected by dotted lines that formed a pattern disturbingly reminiscent of a spider's web. "What am I looking at?" Hegemony listening posts. Automated stations. Scout ships. They've been positioning assets throughout human space for the past decade. Nethys traced one of the dotted lines with her finger. "Your nephew's theft was just the final piece they needed. Now they know our quantum drives can be overloaded remotely." The implications were staggering. If the hegemony could trigger catastrophic failures in Terran ships, the entire human fleet was compromised. But how could the Voidwalkers have discovered this when Terran intelligence had missed it completely? "You'll need to see for yourself," Nethys continued. "There's a derelict research station 3 days from here. The crew thought they were studying cosmic radiation. They were actually being studied." Against his better judgment, Vorthok agreed to the expedition. They took his personal courier ship, the Night's Edge, with a minimal crew. Nethys proved to be an exceptional navigator, guiding them through hyperspace routes that didn't appear on any official charts. "How do you know these paths?" Vorthok asked as they emerged from their 4th jump. "The void teaches you things," she replied cryptically. "When you live between the stars, you learn to read the dark matter currents, the gravitational eddies, the spaces where reality gets thin." The research station hung dead in space, its hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts and radiation burns. According to records, the Enlightenment had lost contact with Terran Command 8 months ago, presumably destroyed by a reactor malfunction. "The reactor didn't malfunction," Nethys said as they docked. "It was sabotaged to look like a malfunction." Inside the station, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows through the corridors. The crew quarters were intact, but empty, as if the inhabitants had simply vanished. In the main laboratory, Vorthok found something that made his blood run cold. The research equipment had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt into something else. Entirely a sophisticated scanning array pointed directly at Terran space. Data crystals scattered across workstations contained terabytes of information about human ship movements, communication frequencies, and defense protocols. "The crew wasn't killed," Nethys explained, her voice echoing in the empty chamber. "They were converted, hegemony neural implants. They spent months gathering intelligence before being extracted." "How do you know all this?" "Because we found 3 other stations just like this one." She activated a wall display showing the locations. "The Voidwalkers have been tracking hegemony infiltration for years. We tried to warn Terran Command, but our reports were dismissed as unsubstantiated rumors from hostile nomads." Vorthok stared at the evidence surrounding him. His own government had ignored warnings that could have prevented infiltration on a massive scale. How many other disasters could have been avoided if someone had listened to the Voidwalkers? "There's more," Nethys said quietly. "The hegemony isn't just planning to attack human colonies. They're planning to replace them." She led him to the station's medical bay, where he found something that would haunt his dreams for years. Dozens of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing what appeared to be a human in perfect health. But when Vorthok looked closer, he saw the telltale scarring of extensive neural surgery. "Sleeper agents," Nethys explained. "Perfect human. Replicas with hegemony minds. They're being positioned throughout our government, our military, our research institutions." She touched one of the pods, almost gently. This one was being prepared to replace Admiral Chen of the 7th Fleet. The scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking. The hegemony hadn't just infiltrated human space, they were systematically replacing human leadership with their own agents. And the only people who had discovered the plot were the outcasts and nomads that mainstream humanity had rejected. Why? Show me this, Vorthok asked. Why not take this evidence directly to the Defense Council? Because they won't believe it, Nethys replied. Not from me, not from any Voidwalker, but they'll believe it from UF. You're willing to stake your reputation on our word. Vorthok understood now why she had married him. It wasn't just about legal protection or social respectability. She needed someone inside the system, someone with enough credibility to make the government listen to an inconvenient truth. The hearing is in 5 days, he said. Yes, and if I present this evidence, it will change everything. The way we see the hegemony, the way we see the Voidwalkers, the way we see ourselves. Yes. Vorthok looked around the dead station one final time, memorizing every detail. He had spent his entire career serving a government that prided itself on human unity and cooperation. Now he was learning that the humans who lived on the margins, the ones dismissed as pirates and outcasts, were the only ones willing to protect that unity when it mattered most. My wife, he said finally, I think it's time the galaxy learned what the Voidwalkers really are. The Terran Defense Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Vorthok presented evidence that shattered their understanding of the galactic balance of power. The hegemony infiltration is not theoretical, he declared, activating the holographic display that showed dozens of compromised stations throughout human space. It is active, ongoing, and has been successful beyond our worst nightmares. Council Chairman Valdris leaned forward, his weathered face skeptical. Admiral, these allegations are extraordinary. You're claiming that an enemy force has replaced our personnel with neuro-controlled duplicates. I'm claiming that my wife's people, the Voidwalkers, have uncovered a conspiracy that our own intelligence services missed completely. Vorthok gestured to Nethys, who stood at his side in formal military dress. Dr. Nethys has spent 15 years documenting hegemony infiltration. Her evidence is irrefutable. Your wife, Counselor Merrick's interjected, is a member of a nomadic cult with known anti-government sympathies. How can we trust intelligence gathered by pirates and raiders? The chamber erupted in murmurs. This was the reaction Nethys had predicted: institutional prejudice, masquerading as skepticism. But Vorthok had prepared for this moment. Counselor Merrick's, he said calmly, 3 months ago, you experienced a mechanical failure aboard your personal yacht near the Kepler station. Do you recall who rescued you? Merrick's frowned. A maintenance crew from the station responded to our distress call. No. Vorthok activated another display. A Voidwalker vessel intercepted your yacht before it could collide with the station's docking array. The pilot identified herself as Kara Nethys, my wife's sister. She repaired your navigation system and guided you to safety, then disappeared before you could file a report. The color drained from Merrick's face as he recognized the truth. Around the chamber, other counselors began exchanging uncomfortable glances. How many of them had been aided by mysterious strangers over the years? Nethys stepped forward. Honorable counselors, the Voidwalkers have been humanity's silent guardians for 3 generations. We maintain your shipping lanes, repair your satellites, rescue your lost vessels, and monitor your enemies. We ask for nothing in return, except the right to exist without persecution. But why this secrecy? Chairman Valdris asked. Why not reveal yourselves and work within official channels? Because revelation means death, Nethys replied simply. The moment we surface, we become targets. The hegemony has been hunting Voidwalker vessels for decades, trying to eliminate the only humans capable of operating undetected in deep space. She activated her own display, showing surveillance footage from the derelict research station. This is what happens when they catch us. The images were horrific Voidwalker prisoners undergoing neural surgery, their memories extracted and analyzed. The hegemony wasn't just trying to replace human leadership. They were learning to replicate human intuition, human adaptability, human ingenuity. The quantum engine theft was a test, Nethys continued. They wanted to see if they could turn a respected Terran officer into an unwitting agent. When that succeeded, they moved to the next phase: systematic replacement of key personnel. Counselor Hayes, the youngest member of the council, spoke up. If this is true, how do we know you're not compromised? How do we know this isn't hegemony, disinformation? It was a fair question, and one that Vorthok had anticipated, because, he said, the hegemony would never reveal their own infiltration network. Dr. Nethys has given us the locations of 37 compromised installations. She's handed us the keys to dismantling their entire operation. At what cost? Merrick's demanded. What does she want in return? Recognition, Vorthok replied. Legal status for the Voidwalkers as a legitimate human subspecies. An end to the bounties and kill orders. The right to trade openly in Terran space. And military alliance, Nethys added. The coming war cannot be won by conventional forces alone. You need scouts who can operate behind enemy lines. Saboteurs who can strike without warning. Guardians who can protect what matters most while you're fighting elsewhere. Chairman Valdris was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence displays. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Nethys, your husband vouches for your integrity. Your intelligence, if accurate, has potentially saved human civilization. But I must ask, what guarantee do we have that the Voidwalkers won't simply disappear again once this crisis passes? Nethys looked at Vorthok, and he saw something in her violet eyes that he hadn't expected: vulnerability. She had spent her entire life in the shadows, trusting no one, depending only on her fellow outcasts. Now, she was asking him to help her take the greatest leap of faith possible. You have my guarantee, Vorthok said firmly. My wife has bound her people's fate to mine through marriage. The Vorthok name has stood for human unity for 1,000 years. It will continue to stand for that unity, regardless of which humans we're protecting. The vote, when it came, was closer than Vorthok had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. The Terran Defense Council officially recognized the Voidwalkers as a legitimate human faction and authorized immediate joint operations against hegemony infiltration sites. As the counselors filed out, debating implementation details and resource allocation, Nethys remained behind with her husband. You realize what you've done? She asked quietly. I've given your people what they deserve: recognition and respect. No, she said, smiling. You've given them something far more dangerous. Hope. Vorthok didn't understand what she meant until later, when the first reports came in from joint Terran Voidwalker operations. The so-called pirates and outcasts weren't just skilled, they were extraordinary. Their ships moved like living things through hyperspace. Their crews anticipated enemy actions with uncanny precision. Their technology surpassed anything in the Terran arsenal. He had married Lirelei Nethys to cover a scandal and save his reputation. Instead, he had revealed that humanity's true strength had never been its unity, had been its diversity. The first joint Terran Void Walker operation revealed the true scope of humanity's peril and its potential. Admiral Vorthok stood on the bridge of the Sovereign's Pride, watching his wife coordinate an assault that should have been impossible. 12 Voidwalker ships, vessels, so heavily modified they barely resembled their original designs, moved through the enemy formation like ghosts made of steel and fury. Target the communication array first, Nethys spoke into her neural link, her voice carrying 2 Voidwalker captains across the battlefield. Prevent them from warning the replacement facility. The hegemony monitoring station never saw them coming. Vorthok had commanded fleet actions for 2 decades, but he had never seen anything like this. The Voidwalker ships didn't follow standard tactical doctrine. They float around enemy fire, like liquid mercury, struck with surgical precision, then vanished before return shots could find them. Their weapons were strange hybrids of human ingenuity and alien technology, creating effects that defied conventional physics. How are they doing that? Fleet Captain Morrison breathed, watching a Voidwalker corvette phase partially out of normal space to avoid a plasma barrage. Dimensional folding, Nethys explained, without taking her eyes off the tactical display. We've been studying hegemony technology for decades, learning to turn their own techniques against them. The monitoring station's destruction took less than 10 minutes, but what they found in the wreckage would reshape the war entirely. Admiral, the boarding team reported, you need to see this. The station's central computer contained the complete hegemony battle plan, not just for infiltration, but for the total conquest of human space. Operation Convergence would begin in 3 weeks with simultaneous strikes against every major Terran military base. Compromised personnel would sabotage defenses from within while hegemony fleets attacked from without. The plan was perfect, comprehensive, and absolutely devastating. It was also now completely useless. They'll have to accelerate their timeline, Nethys observed, studying the data. Once they realize we've captured their plans, they'll assume all their infiltrators are compromised. Can we identify all the replaced personnel? Vorthok asked. Some, but not all. She highlighted sections of the data. They've been very careful about compartmentalization. Each sleeper agent only knows about their immediate contacts. The implications were staggering. Hegemony agents were embedded throughout the Terran military and government, and there was no way to identify them all before the attack began. Conventional security screening would take months, and they had weeks at most. We need a different approach, Vorthok decided. Dr. Nethys, can your people identify infiltrators through other means? Possibly. She activated her personal communicator. Kara, I need a full spectrum analysis of Terran command structures. Neural resonance patterns, behavioral algorithms, metabolic signatures, everything. Her sister's response came through the ship's speakers. Already running it, Lyra, but we'll need access to classified personnel files, medical records, communication logs. Granted, Vorthok said immediately. Full access to all Terran military databases. Morrison looked shocked. Admiral, you can't just I can, and I am. Vorthok's voice brooked. No argument. Captain, we're 3 weeks away from the complete destruction of human civilization. Normal protocols are suspended. Over the next 72 hours, the combined Terran Voidwalker intelligence operation revealed the true extent of hegemony. Infiltration. 47 confirmed sleeper agents were identified throughout the military command structure, including 2 fleet admirals and a member of the Defense Council itself. But the most disturbing discovery came from analyzing the agents' neural patterns. They're not just replacements, Nethys reported grimly. They're improvements. The hegemony has been using human neural templates to create enhanced versions of our own officers. Faster reflexes, perfect memory, complete emotional control, enhanced. How? Vorthok asked. Cybernetic implants, genetic modification, psychological conditioning. She displayed brain scans, showing the subtle differences. They've taken everything that makes us human and tried to perfect it. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The hegemony, an alien civilization that had always claimed superiority over humanity, was now trying to become more human than humans themselves. They're afraid of us, Vorthok realized. All this infiltration, all this preparation, they're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to become us. Double quotes net, HYS nodded. The Voidwalkers have always known this. That's why we've stayed. Hidden, why we've developed our own enhancements. We've been preparing for the day when our enemies would try to steal what makes us human. The revelation changed everything about their defensive strategy. Instead of trying to root out every infiltrator, they would use the sleeper agent's enhanced capabilities against them. The hegemony's improvements had introduced subtle behavioral patterns that could be detected and exploited. "We're not just fighting an invasion," Vorthok announced to his assembled staff. "We're fighting an identity crisis. The enemy has forgotten who they are while trying to become who we are. That gives us an advantage they can't anticipate." "What kind of advantage?" Morrison asked. Vorthok looked at his wife, seeing her smile with anticipation. "The one advantage, no amount of technology can replicate the ability to be unpredictably, irrationally, impossibly human." As if to prove his point, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The hegemony had accelerated their timeline even further than expected. The war for humanity's future was beginning now, and it would be fought not just with weapons and tactics, but with the very essence of what it meant to be human. "All hands to battle stations," Vorthok ordered, signaled the fleet hopper. "Liberation begins immediately." Beside him, Nethys was already coordinating with Voidwalker vessels throughout the sector. Her people had spent generations preparing for this moment, living in the spaces between stars, becoming something more than human while remaining essentially human. Now they would discover whether that was enough. The final battle for humanity's soul was fought not in space, but in the quantum realm between heartbeats. Admiral Vorthok watched from the Bridge of the Sovereigns. Pride as the hegemony fleet materialized around Earth itself, 300 vessels appearing in perfect formation, their sleeper agents having disabled the orbital defense grid exactly as planned. The enemy had achieved complete tactical surprise and overwhelming numerical superiority. They had also made the mistake of underestimating what they were fighting. "All Terran vessels, this is Fleet Command," came the transmission from Admiral Chunor, what had once been Admiral Chen. "Stand down immediately. Resistance is futile." "Lyra," Vorthok said quietly to his wife, "are you ready?" Nethys closed her eyes, her consciousness linking with every Voidwalker ship in the solar system. "We've been ready for 3 generations, Kalen." What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries, assuming there were any left to study it. The Voidwalker ships didn't attack the hegemony fleet, they attacked reality itself. Using technology that blended human intuition with alien physics, they began folding space-time around individual enemy vessels, creating pocket dimensions where the laws of physics operated according to human will rather than mathematical certainty. Hegemony ships found themselves trapped in bubbles of altered reality where their perfect calculations meant nothing. "Impossible," breathed the fake Admiral Chen. "No known technology can manipulate dimensional constants on this scale." "You're right," Vorthok replied over an open channel. "No known technology can do this. But you forgot something in all your research into human nature." On cue, every human vessel in the system, Tyrone military, civilian cargo haulers, even private yachts joined the battle, not with weapons, but with something far more powerful, pure, stubborn, illogical, human defiance. The hegemony had spent decades studying human behavior, creating perfect neural models of human decision-making, but their models were based on individual psychology, not collective consciousness. They had never encountered the phenomenon that occurred when humans faced extinction, the moment when every person in the species became part of something larger than themselves. "This is Captain Morrison, of the freight hauler, Lucky Strike," came a transmission from a rust bucket cargo ship. "I've got a hold full of agricultural supplies, and absolutely no weapons. But if those things think they're taking my planet, they've got another think coming." Across the system, similar declarations poured in from fishing boats, passenger liners, mining ships, and research vessels. Humans who had never fired a shot in anger were flying directly at hegemony dreadnoughts, using everything from industrial lasers to modified agricultural equipment as weapons. The aliens had prepared for human tactics, human technology, human strategy. They had not prepared for human poetry. Unknown vessels, you cannot possibly inflict meaningful damage with civilian equipment. the hegemony commander transmitted. Your sacrifice is illogical. Logic. Captain Morrison laughed. Friend, we stopped being logical the moment our ancestors decided to climb down from the trees and walk upright. Logic would have kept us in caves. Logic would have kept us on one planet. Logic sure as hell wouldn't have made us marry our problems away and then fall in love with the solutions. Vorthok felt his chest tighten as he understood what Morrison meant. His marriage to Nethys had begun as a calculated move to save his reputation. But somewhere between her first smile and her final leap of faith, calculation had become something else entirely. The neural resonance is cascading, Nethys reported, her voice filled with wonder. Every human consciousness in the system is linking up. The hegemony ships are being overwhelmed by pure emotional energy. The sleeper agents were the first to break. Enhanced human minds, designed for perfect logical operation, couldn't process the chaotic input of millions of humans acting on pure emotion. One by one, the fake officers began clutching their heads, their neural implants overloading as they tried to comprehend the incomprehensible. Admiral Chen was the last to fall, his synthetic consciousness finally admitting what his creators had never understood. You're not acting according to any predictable pattern. Your behavior serves no evolutionary advantage. Why would you sacrifice everything for a species that can't even agree on basic principles? Because, Vorthok replied, watching his wife coordinate impossible physics with a joy that made his heart sing. We're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to be human. The hegemony fleet began to retreat, their carefully planned invasion dissolving into chaos as they encountered something their technology couldn't counter, a species that grew stronger when faced with extinction, more united when divided, more dangerous when backed into a corner. But the real victory wasn't military, it was personal. As the last enemy ship vanished into hyperspace, Vorthok found Nethys on the observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly in the void. Her silver hair caught the starlight, and her violet eyes reflected depths he was only beginning to understand. We did it, he said. Did we? She turned to face him. The hegemony will be back. Other enemies will come. The universe is vast and full of things that don't understand humanity. Then we'll face them together. All of us Darrens, Voidwalkers, whoever else calls themselves human. He took her hand, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. You've shown me something I never knew I was missing, which is that the Vorthok family legacy isn't about military service or political power. It's about protecting what makes us human, even when we can't define what that means. Nethys smiled, and this time, it transformed her entire face. Kaelin Vorthok, I married you to save my people. But you've saved something much more important. What's that? The idea that humans can be more than the sum of their parts. That love and logic can coexist. That sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to marry it and see what happens. Later, historians would debate the tactical innovations that won the Battle of Earth. Military analysts would study the Voidwalker technology that turned the tide. Philosophers would argue about the implications of collective human consciousness. But Admiral Kaelin Vorthok, hero of humanity and husband to the woman who had revealed his true worth, knew that the real victory was much simpler. To people from different worlds had found a way to make each other better, and in doing so, had shown an entire species what it truly meant to be human. The scandal that had forced their marriage was forgotten within a month. The love that had grown from that marriage would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. In the end, that was the most human achievement of all.